Let me get my...
Your right stance?
Yeah.
Okay. You got that?
Yeah, everybody. Oh, we're not supposed to smile either. Sorry. First time I saw an 88 truck was in 1972. And that's the kind of visions.
I'm gonna treat you
That's
with
the kind of visions I have.
I'm going to treat you with a hostile witness in a minute.
Full-size Chevy. No wonder, when it comes to pickups, America's having a change of heart.
The heartbeat of America.
You know about Boyd Connington? Oh yeah, Boyd Connington. He builds some nice hot rods, and this guy would, in his southern accent, went, "Trucks too, trucks too." I mean, that was like, it was the funniest thing when the guy said it. But I mean, he was known for his hot rods, but some people knew about the trucks, you know. And the more he did these trucks, the more they got out there. They were just like blown away with it. You know, that was the best thing since chopped bread or whatever they say.
You know, I was born into this. I mean, from the time I was 15 years old, my dad had me on a machine, and that's right about the time, and you know, around 90 when the wheel business started to take off, the sport truck movement started to take off. So, you know, my whole professional life has been building wheels.
I really can't remember the very first 88 truck I did, but I would say probably what got the motor going here, and it was probably all the trucks I did for Beltec and with Tom Taylor. And we were working in conjunction with Boyd, even though we didn't work with Boyd. Yeah, because we were doing, I mean, Tom was doing some wild stuff in the late 80s trucks. And so, and I got to give credit to Bruce McCoy in the drop shop too. I mean, you know what? I mean, we did every one of his trucks just about, and every one was a cover shot, and he went all out, and he was a promoter, man.
What influences more, as far as from a graphic design standpoint, is what's going to be the ultimate use of the vehicle. Is it going to be for commercial use? Is it going to be strictly for family fun and vacations, or as a runabout? That's really where the design themes come from.
Yeah, one of the trucks that stands out was the ZR1 pickup my dad built, and it had ZR1 drivetrain on it. I remember the first day he brought it home from the shop, and he said, "Get in, let's go for a ride." And I mean, that frame was on the ground, and we pulled out of the driveway, which isn't very steep, and that thing was scraping out. And you know, I was young at the time; I was probably 16, and I said, "Man." You know, and you know, we got on the road and he nailed it, and I mean, just shifting through the gears. That thing was awesome. That was a great truck. You know?
I mean, the Boyd look was different than anybody else. Boyd was, his motto was less is more. But Bert had some good ideas, and he did a lot of nice trucks. He wasn't afraid to cut and weld and move things around, where most people, they just wanted to be able to bolt something on and go, you know. Just like anything else, everybody's looking for the easy way out. But in order to take it a step farther, you had to do that stuff. You had to cut things and move them around and shorten them up, and that's the difference between most of the people and Boyd. Even today's trucks, they don't have the appeal of them trucks. When you did them right, that was a good looking truck. I mean, even the earlier trucks, the 70s trucks before that, the early 80s. That's still a good looking truck too, but there's something about that 88 to 98 truck. They changed them a little bit here and there along the way, but that truck overall is a good looking truck. When you get it to sit right, just the stance on that thing, they're good looking trucks, you know. But you had to do the right things to them. You could do them, and then the guys got carried away. They would take and make a roll pan with Corvette taillights in it, and people just got crazy, and that's the stuff that I think kind of ruined it, because now everybody was doing it, you know, and people with no taste at all were making parts, and pretty soon it was just like it was too much.
Yeah. I mean, for me, custom cars were always around, and my dad always had something cool that he drove, and you know, in the early 80s it was a cool Chevy pickup, you know, lowered, and you know, with cool paint job and wheels that he actually made right here in this garage. So, you know, for me, by the time it started to pick up, when the new body style came out in '88, it was, you know, it was interesting, because it was brand new, and this was the dawn of made-to-order parts, customizing of these cars, and you know, the billet wheel boom.
It brought to light the biggest selling vehicle that Detroit has, and the reason why those vehicles sold the way they did was because the one thing Americans know how to do is make trucks. If we're talking everything from heavy duty equipment to, to dredge something like the Panama Canal or whatever, to a light duty vehicle for like a florist shop, to maybe an SUV so people can take their kids to school or whatever. It reminded people that Americans can do the proper vehicle if given free rein to manufacture that type of vehicle.
In my graphic sense, I've always been a believer of don't be disappointed in 3 years from now when you walk in your garage and you go, gosh, I wish I wouldn't have done that. So, and Craig Fraser one time called me a linear graphic person, which to me that was a compliment. I always believed things started here and went that way, beginning to end, and compliment. I mean, sure, there was those vehicles that were show vehicles and promotion vehicles that just had to hit you in the face, and I mean, there's bells and whistles and dog and pony shows going off. But for the most part, for my clientele, the guy that drove his dually to the river in the weekend, or they went to the truck jamborees or whatever it was, they had to see their truck every day. And when you're spending that kind of money back then, you obviously, most guys could not afford to redo it in 3 to 5 years again to stay with the trend. So I try not to be too trendy. I was greatly influenced by Billy Carter, and even Billy B. and Dick Vale. I always loved the drag boat graphic thing, and so I kind of just followed suit. I mean, to me, if you stole anything from Billy Carter, you're stealing from the right guy. And I don't care about the rest of you painters that say I never stole anything of crap. We all stole, borrowed, influenced, whatever you want to call it. You would always say, look what I came up with. But when you went to a truck show or a car show, man, or a magazine came out, you knew. I mean, I can show you my cheat book. I got clippings of pieces of artwork from other people's cars pasted everywhere, because we all need that kick in the butt sometimes when it's 10 o'clock at night and you go, man, I got to get on this thing tomorrow and I don't even have a design for it yet.
The trucks came out and that thing just took off, and he got me. I was doing all the lowering. Me and another guy, Larry Surjoff, who was a Boyd's normal chassis guy. He designed all the A-arms and all that stuff, and then I would build them and install them and stuff. But so then I went to California Street Rods from there, and still was doing trucks. The truck was still going on, so we were doing all the Chevrolet trucks from Chevy would bring us, and we would do them for SEMA.
So more like concept ideas on
Ideas, yeah. We would have. I mean, there was several different artists: Steve Stanford, Chip Foose, and Chip Foose at the time he would come in. He was still in school learning how to draw,
right.
And he didn't have a shop, and he didn't have his father was building cars, but Chip was a kid in art school. I don't think Chip was 20 years old. And he would come in and he would do these drawings for us, concept drawings, and then we would carry them out and build the trucks and send them to SEMA.
Well, the first thing I thought about was the famous pickup that Tom Taylor and Pete Santini collaborated on, with the progressive graphics, the scallops. It was basically, like I mentioned earlier, about this whole hot rod theme. It was one of the first vehicles to kind of roll out that whole trend, and of course it coming out looking as nice as it did. Now all of a sudden you get people like Bret Michaels or the Van Halen brothers, whoever. They want a really cool looking pickup with that whole theme, that whole vibe, that whole just cool hot rod look.
When that body style hit, it was right around the time the CNC machining started to take off, and my dad started to do different designs and billet wheels, and it was one of those eras where before then you had center lines, everybody had those. You had American Racing wasn't doing anything cool in the 80s. Western Wheel, all these guys, they always carried the same wire wheels and all these same Me Too wheels, and it was an opportunity for somebody to take their 88 to 98, lower it, and at that point in the beginning, to me, there was only 6 designs. But by the time 90, 91 rolled out, there was probably 20 or 30 designs, and it was something, especially with the way the dealerships were jumping on the sport truck movement. They were able to put 10 different vehicles on the lot with 10 different wheels, and it wasn't a major operation for us to supply them with that.
Because in the beginning, we only made wheels for the hot rods that we did, up until about 87, 88. And that's when Budnick jumped on board with Boyd, and they decided, hey, why not sell these wheels to the public? You know, but that's when it went from knockoff to bolt-on, and we tried many different wheel caps, like the center caps. I remember we had one we called the titty cap. It was just a round bubble, but the original ones had that hex nut, you know. In 88, he opened up the muscle car shop at the end of an Electric Avenue where the wheels were being built, and we did just nothing but trucks. We did trucks one after the other for GMC Truck Center. Well, the main one was at Boyd's when we did the top chop on that pink truck for Lynn Pugh, and they wanted the whole truck painted pink. It was like hot pink with white stripes and silver and stuff. I mean, the truck, nowadays you looked at it, you'd just go, God, that was an 80s truck for sure, you know. Lynn Pugh was a hot rodder, and he seen what Boyd was doing with these trucks, and he had to have one, but his couldn't be just a normal lower job and some wheels. He had to have the top chopped, and the custom roll pan made, and the door handle shaved, and I mean, all the stuff. They had to have it all. And once we did Lynn's truck, Lynn just said, hey, let's just start putting these things on. I mean, people are coming out of the woodwork wanting these lower trucks, so we put them on the, we went and got it, and they put them right on the showroom and sold them right on the dealer's lot and the showrooms, and then pretty soon all the dealers were jumping on board. I mean, you could go down here, any one of these Chevy dealers, they'd have 4 or 5 lowered trucks out in the front. Not all done by Boyd, but all done, you know, by that time Beltec started making all the parts, but like I said, in the beginning, there was no Beltec drop spindles or flip kits or nothing like that. Everything was hand fabricated. We cut plates, and I remember making cardboard templates and then cutting it into a plate, and then we'd cut that out on the bandsaw, and then we'd cut the tube, and then we'd weld it all together, and I was still learning at the time. I mean, I didn't really understand a lot of it. I knew how to weld, and I knew kind of what I was doing, but even the fabricating the parts, sometimes I'd grab mild steel plate and start cutting it, and Larry, the chassis guy, would go, whoa, 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 we gotta have this 4130. You can't be cutting. It's gonna be fine, you know.
Oh my gosh, we were doing at least 1 truck a week for them, let alone whatever else is coming through. I was just, and it was amazing. I mean, again, I was really blessed, I guess, with an imagination or endurance or whatever you want to call it. I'll show you some of my sketches, like, pre-computer days. But I mean, for the most part, it was just grab a roll tape and go. You know, we actually, as a shop, way back then, we were actually doing lowering here too. We were an account of Beltex and a lot of other manufacturers, so we were able to offer roll pans and all that stuff, even though we weren't doing it as much as the big guys. But through that, I helped set up the truck shop at Massey Chevrolet and at DeLillo Chevrolet. We were great influences there. We went in and showed them, you know, what they should stock. I got them set up with, you know, Weld Wheels and Beltec and all those guys back then. You know, helped them design the setup and you know, what kind of truck should represent what they have. And then we were actually doing some trucks for them, and you know, and DeLillo really got into it because a guy named Wayne Barger was in charge of that, and Wayne was a gearhead, and so he let us do some really cool theme trucks, the 57 Chevy truck, the 62 Chevy truck, you know, those kind of trucks, and they were pretty big influences. You can always tell when one of your vehicles is an influence because you see it poorly done somewhere on the freeway one day, like 2 years later, you know. I would say, again, because of, and maybe just because of uniqueness, not because I really liked it myself, when Tom Taylor and I started messing around with the computer-generated masks to do these wild, shredded, falling apart, exploding paint schemes that nobody's ever seen before. And again, this is way before computers were, you know, household word. I think the turquoise and magenta shredded Beltec truck just blew everybody's mind at SEMA that year. And even at the truck jam, everywhere it went, I mean, they had to stand people around this truck to protect it because people were trying to peel off or pick off, because there's no way you can paint this, it's too intricate. Okay, there's too much going on. Couldn't imagine how'd they do it.
Remember when we did Cadzilla, Ericsson drew that car with a big wheel in the front. And that wheel on Cadzilla was still a 15-inch wheel, but the front face of the wheel was like, I think like an 18-inch. So they had a 15-inch tire, and the tire had to come on from the back side, and then the wheel covered the front of the tire, and it made it look like low-profile tire because the wheel covered up most of the tire. But it was still a 15-inch tire coming on from the back side of a 15-inch wheel with a front face that was 18-inch in diameter. And that kind of gave it that look, and I think that started a lot of that big wheel thing, you know. But then the factory started coming up with bigger and bigger and bigger every year, and I remember the 17s were huge, you know. 16s really didn't do a lot, I don't think. It went from 15, and then 17s like were huge, and then pretty soon there were 18s, and then but there was a lot of tire sizes available in 17-inch. When you got to the 18s, you were pretty limited on tire sizes, and then they got to 20s, and geez, I lost track after that. I don't even know. I've never had anything bigger than a 20, and I don't think I ever want nothing bigger than a 20. I mean, it's just not in my. And I can tell you one thing: Boyd Jr. and Boyd Sr. That's where they would have fights, because Jr. wanted to go with the flow. He wanted to go bigger, 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 and spinners and all that shit. And Boyd was stuck in. You don't need all that shit, Junior. 17 inches is as big as we need to go.
Granted, their early billet thing, they were kind of feeling their way along, but when they went to the more molded cast look, that was a little less chiseled, you know, that to me opened up the whole, and then the increased diameter, because now all of a sudden they went from like a 15 or a 16-inch wheel to what they got now. I mean, granted, it's possible today to go too far, but what I'm saying is a truck is a larger vehicle, and the wheels needed to be scaled up to proportion things correctly. But
because I remember, you know, we've been involved in SEMA for longer than you were born, but you know, I remember back then, even though they invited us to do their rigs for them, they were not really aftermarket friendly people minded. So it took years before we start seeing the influence of what was being done, not just by me, but every builder, you know, with the billet grills, the grill changes, the smooth bumpers, the cutouts in the rear bumpers to look like roll pans, better looking mirrors, you know, all that approach. And then, you know, even the interiors, I think the manufacturers finally realized, gosh, these guys aren't just putting manure in the bed of these things anymore, or lumber. They're driving their family to church on Sunday. So let's give them some console and this and that and bells and whistles and cup holders. And so, yeah, I think it's taken years for them to finally get in the bandwidth, but you can see the influence even today of the trucks we were doing 15 and 20 years ago.
Like if you put a full-size short bed Chevy truck from 88 to 98 next to a today's truck, it looks like an S10 truck when they're lowered.
I think it's a cool body style. I personally think it's probably my favorite of all the Chevy body styles. And I just think we're at a time now where enough time has gone by, and there's so much cool stuff coming out of the late 80s and early 90s that this is just a perfect truck right now to customize, as you know, if it's a classic truck, if you will, if enough time has gone by. You know time's gone by when you start hearing Nirvana on KLOS. Yeah. Or, you know, Stone Temple Pilots or something, yeah. One of these 90s bands, you know, on KLOS. That's classic rock right now. Yeah. There's a guy in the corner down here that swings those signs, and we were driving, the guy's all, 1990s baby, you know.
I got one customer that I just did this 90 454 truck, and back in 90 he bought one, but the 454 wasn't enough, so we took it out and put an LS6 454, which was like 450, 500 horsepower or something like that, and that truck was just wild to drive, man. We drove that, he drove it every day and he loved it, but one thing led to another. He ended up selling it, and he came back to me now, a year ago, and said, I want my truck back again. But he sold it to Japan, I think, or something. I said, well, let's do another one. So we did. We found another 454, and I did it actually nicer than this last one. But yeah, the guys are now they're coming back for the second time around. You know, not only are they taking a new truck and doing it, Now they're going back and getting the truck they had in '88 to '90 or whatever, and they want to do it again.
Yeah, and actually I have Eric Brockmeyer drawing me up a little short bed right now that we're going to feature our new wheels on. So we got a new concave profile that I'm trying to push, and run those in the rear, standard profile in the front, and just have something that's clean. But we want to make it handle, and just have some fun with it. Don't think too hard about it, man. I mean, like I said, less is more. Just build a nice, streetable truck, that you can have a little fun with.
Really like the stuff that was going on. In fact, I'd like to see a lot of that come back. The whole wild and crazy, let's custom paint, let's experiment. But this time, like things that we knew was in the experimental stage, let's eliminate that. We've learned now from then, but still keep I guess what I'm saying is the spirit of those wild custom paint jobs from back then. We had a good time on that.
If you were going to build one of these trucks today, how do you think you would have built it? Or how do you think you would build it?
All black.